I'd rather create something that others criticize than create nothing and criticize others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospodpreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of the Hospodpreneurs Podcast. Today, Sean Forsyth and I have a chat at the recently opened Osbourne Hotel. At the time of recording, Sean is between representing Asahi and Brown Forman. This is a nice long episode full of content with stories, industry insights and commentary on trends and developments in the world of cocktails and spirits. Sean's hospitality experience spans 2 decades, and the number of things he's done in that time is unbelievable. Sit back and enjoy. It's going to be a good episode. Have fun. Hello and welcome to the show, Sean.
G'day, how are you, James?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thank you for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure, mate.
Mate, I wanted to say you've been a mentor and an inspiration for a lot of bartenders that I've spoken to, even guests that I've had on the show that have come up through the ranks. So I'm really glad to have you on the show today.
Oh, mate, yeah, pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Cheers, man. The first question you may have heard if you've listened to some of the episodes. The first question I like to ask is if you have a crazy hospitality story.
I have plenty. You know, I've been in hospitality for, the best part of 20 years, next year.
Yeah.
I started off working in restaurants when I was 15 and have, evolved into bars and then into brand ambassador roles and owned my own bars and consulted on bars, and I've traveled around the world and worked for different spirit companies and bars and events. Mm-hmm. So, I'm a bit afraid here because I could probably go down a deep, dark rabbit hole and maybe not be able to pull myself back out of it. But I think, there's been some amazing times. I think probably one of the best, bar experiences that I've had was making cocktails in honour of Douglas Ankara. So Douglas Ankara was, one of the kind of modern fathers of contemporary cocktail culture in London. Mm-hmm. Dick Bradsell created the espresso martini and the bramble. And it was Douglas Ankara that created drinks like the Porn Star Martini and established LAB, the London Academy of Bartending, mm-hmm. which is an institution that bred, some of the best bartenders in the world and really kind of took craft cocktail culture in the UK forward. And is really why London is the pinnacle for craft cocktail culture in the world today. And in 2013, they celebrated Douglas Ankara's life at Tales of the Cocktail, and the way that they did that as a bartending collective and community. So you had people like DeGroff and Gary Regan,
they're all there.
Who's who in the zoo, Jim Meehan. Everybody, was there to celebrate Douglas's life. There must have been, probably 500, bartenders and industry professionals from all over the world. It was on a paddle steamer on the Mississippi, so proper, like Huckberry Finn style.
Yeah.
And each different area of the steamboat had a different bar offering. I got to manage one of the bars with a handful of, great bartenders, people like Rich Hunt, who's an industry stalwart based over in the UK, and we just got to, rock out some fantastic drinks and, just host people from all over the world and have a great time. And it's just a really memorable experience, finishing, working that bar and operating that bar with the boys, and then, going and sitting up on the top deck with, Dean Callan and, smoking cigars and just kind of reminiscing on, on the great life that we have as an opportunity to be, bartenders in this industry around the world. So I love that story. Yeah, always love that story. It was a crazy story, crazy night.
Yeah, that's a really awesome story. What about weird, wonderful, interesting things you've seen patrons do in a bar?
Oh, yeah, look, I mean, obviously we've probably all seen patrons, fall off a bar stool. I think actually one of the funniest ones that I ever saw was this bird. She was sitting at the bar. I was working at Socho, which was a part of the Match Bar group in London. It actually burnt down a couple of years ago now. I was working behind the bar. It was like a quiet Wednesday night. It must have been 9 or 10 o'clock, and it's a East London bar, so it's a city bar. So you had a couple of suits there, just kind of minding their own business, having a cocktail or an old fashioned at the bar. And then this bird came in with this bloke. He was completely juiced up and roided up, like tan, big gold chain, like the whole lot. And she, was that real kind of short, skimpy black dress. Hair was buffed up and like sprayed with every type of hairspray and every type of product in it to keep it what it was. And Anyway, so, this bird and this bloke are sitting at the bar and they're kind of, getting into each other kind of thing. And then you've got, these two other blokes that, probably would have been 24, 25, nicely dressed, quite slim and slender and just minding their own business, having a drink and having a chat. Now, there was a candle sitting on this bar, right? Like a big wax candle, probably about the same size as this microphone. And it obviously was alight.
Yeah.
And this bird, she was pretty close by, and her hair was so toxic, right, and filled with ferns. Man, we watched this flame kind of jump and ignite into her hair. So her hair's on fire, right? And she doesn't realise. And this bloke, because her hair's so big, right? It's 3 times the size of her head. That's how big her hair is. So the bloke that she's like sitting with, he's just engaged in her eyes and looking at her eyes. I'm sitting across from the bar, and I'm just like, holy shit, her hair's on fire. So I've gone straight down to fill up a cocktail shaker from the bar top because I had a sink. I was filling it up with water. And as I'm doing that, one of the skinnier guys, one of the bankers or finance guys, whatever they were, they've seen it. And one of them started hitting her with this menu, right? And then the other ones who had a glass of water on the bar, he's picked it up and thrown it over her. So that's happened. She's freaked out. She's like, oh my God, oh, bang. And then she's been covered in water. And this big bloke that was like a shaven silverback gorilla, he's kind of moved her aside. And I swear to God, he was about to like pound these guys like Hulk style into the ground. Yeah. I had to jump across the bar like, whoa, 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 whoa. Her hair was on fire. Mate. Calm down. Her hair's on fire. He goes, what? And then she's like, oh, what? Oh my God. And then she realizes half her hair's gone. Yeah. And then they kind of stop and smell the air. They can smell all their hair's burnt. Yeah. And so these poor lads, they're doing the right thing, but you could see the whites of their eyes. They were that afraid of this bloke just absolutely crushing them. And then, the bloke and the bird, they kind of made pretty quick to get out of the bar. And these two lads were pretty shaken up. That was a pretty funny story. So never put candles on bar tops, people. You just never know. You never know what can happen.
Oh, I like that one. That is a crazy hospitality story. So thank you for answering the question 100%. I'd like to ask you, Sean, what is it that inspires you?
It's a really interesting question because I've always worked based around passion. So I've always been, when I started in this industry, it was because I was passionate about food and beverage. My parents ran and operated hotels, so I grew up all over Australia in hotels. So I've always been a hospo kid. I started working in restaurants and working on the floor as a waiter, and I really liked that as a section waiter, as a duty manager, and I enjoyed the interaction with people, and I was passionate about that, passionate about giving good service, creating rapport, basically being a part of a table's night that was memorable, whether they wanted me to be a part of it and entertain, or whether they just needed me to, kind of drop something off. So that kind of was passion for me. But what inspired me to kind of move into bartending and then move into the brand ambassador role was there was just something really impressive to me about bartending and the bartender. When I was working, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, when I was finishing year 12 in Canberra, and I was working for a group of restaurants in Canberra called Bellucci's, the bartender had a flair about it. It was, cocktails were just starting to move away from, blended drinks with cream and like the Midori Spice, for instance, and move to, stick drinks like Caprioscas. So, seasonal ingredients, fresh ingredients with, vodka, which at the time was just literally starting to explode and expand. Before 2000, vodka was Smirnoff in Australia, and then, brands like Viborova came, and then, Belvedere and Grey Goose, and the cocktail explosion, driven primarily through the Capriosca and the stick drink, it kind of created this revolution, I suppose, of craft cocktail culture in Australia. So that was inspiring. There was this whole kind of, you're not just a bloke or a girl, making a crap drink or whatever. I mean, there's a craft element to this. It's about, creating something and then serving it. So that was inspirational. And then it was about 2003, Bacardi line had launched in Australia. It had been a company that had been around for about, I think, 12 months, and they employed Australia's first ever brand ambassador for spirits, a guy called Raj Nagra, who's now the global ambassador for Bombay Sapphire. He was the first ever ambassador of spirits, so he looked after Bacardi, Bombay Sapphire, and Kuiper Schnapps. And he developed an educational program for the on-trade, and the first session that he actually ran in Canberra, because obviously he was based in Sydney. Sydney was an influential market. If you're going to develop a program, test it somewhere that's not as impactful or influential. So if you fuck it up, like it's all good. It's not going to have a negative effect. And so I saw Raj come down and present and make drinks and talk about rum and do magic tricks. Like the dude was doing like card tricks at the bar and making, cherries turn into limes with like flair bartending and tins. It was like next level. Like you've never seen anything like it, back in those days. And I was like, I want to be like this guy. So how do I be like you? And he said, well, you've got to be passionate about the industry. I said, well, what did you do to get in this? He said, well, I went and learned how to make drinks in London. I was like, why London? That's the epicenter of craft cocktail culture in the world. Back in 2004, like the US fucking had nothing. Like Angel's Share and maybe, Milk and Honey had just, was there, but, Sasha Petrowski wasn't making any money. He was sleeping at the bar because, the place is empty all the time. So that didn't exist. London was where it was at. It was the Atlantic with Dick Bradsell. It was Match Bar. It was Lab with Douglas Ancraft. So I made this conscious decision to go to London and go there to work and learn and work in the best bars and to effectively achieve this goal to become a brand ambassador for Bacardi, evidently. And that's what I did. And so I went over there and, worked in these bars. And I just, again, that culture back then in 2003, 2004, 5 and 6 in London, it was the start of this amazing kind of revolution for spirits and cocktails. And it was an inspiring place to be. You had access to world leaders in this game. Dale DeGroff was always there. You had people like Angus Winchester still working for the Match Bar Group at the time and, working a bar together, with people like Angus and people like Michael Butt and Sam Jevons and all these guys that, really steered, the industry globally as we kind of, we see it and know it today alongside other people like Dre Masso and so forth. But for me, I think it's more just been what's inspired me is it's the experience and it's the understanding that anything is possible within this industry. If you're passionate about drinks, if you're passionate about service, if you're passionate about like customer experience and customer engagement and events, you can do anything. Like you could start off working in a cafe making coffee and you can enjoy that, and you can go and get a job pouring beers in a bar and then learn a little bit about cocktails, and from there you can become a craft brewer pretty easily, or you can work in events and all of a sudden you can go, bugger it, I'm just going to go and spend some time in Singapore, and within 6 months, because of some networks and connections you've made working with, say, Sweet and Chili in Sydney, they've got you doing events in Singapore, and then all of a sudden you're being headhunted to Hong Kong to go and, represent a spirits brand, and bang, all of a sudden, this crazy life has just happened. So I think that's what inspires me, is that there's just anything is possible within this industry, and it's an industry that's so wonderful at sharing and nurturing and bringing people through. Like if you put your mind on it, you will achieve it in hospitality, certainly within bars and within drinks, with the way that the culture is set at the moment. You try and do that with mining, you know what I mean? Like you try and do that in finance, you try and do that in law, in medicine.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
My background's in finance, and I didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah.
I loved hospitality. I loved the excitement. This funny thing is that the same thing that I liked about finance is the thing that I like about hospitality. It's actually the idea of organized chaos. And so when I was sitting in the office and I was watching all the numbers fly past on the screen, all the news announcements coming up, I was like, man, I love this, but there's something about getting my coffee on my break that I love more. And in the end, I just moved into hospitality. So that's why I'm here. And
man, I think, that's it. It is the energy,
Yeah.
But for me, I think it is just that anything is possible. I think, honestly, anything is possible in this industry. You can end up anywhere.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's crazy. Like, you've thrown so many names out there as well. I'll make sure that I post those names and the locations as well.
Yeah.
But when you were in London, like, how did you go about just getting a job in a great cocktail bar? How did you do that?
I went to London. I saved up $4,500. All right, back in 2003, 2004. You had to have, I think, $5,000 or something to get a 2-year visa. You had to show that you had money or whatever. So I saved that up, and then when I got to London, I was like, yeah, it'll be sweet. once I kind of get my lodging sorted, so get a place to stay sorted and pay bond and all that kind of stuff, I should have 2 months, before I'll need to find work. Back then the Aussie dollar was like 48 cents to the pound. When I rocked into London, I moved to Brixton, and I was lucky. I stayed with a friend there, and it was a big share house in Brixton, and luckily somebody left one of the rooms. It's like a 6-bedroom house or whatever, so I was able to kind of just stay there, which is bloody perfect. I think it was nearly £1,000 of bond that I had to pay, and then all this kind of stuff. So effectively, that 5k turned into £2,500, and then when you eat and then get public transport or a taxi somewhere, or it's like go and visit like a museum or whatever, it's like, holy shit, I got no money. So pretty much within 3 days I was broke, and I was like, fuck, I need to find a job now. So I was in Clapham, and I just went and hit up a bar. It's just like, fuck it, like I've got hospitality experience, I'd been working in bars in Canberra, and I'd opened a nightclub in Canberra and cafes and bars in Canberra, and I'd done some competitions, and like I knew kind of how to make a cocktail, but I had, I knew how to make a cocktail back then in 2003 in Australia, which was lots of muddled fruit and vodka and maybe a liqueur kind of scenario. Which was, enough to kind of give me swagger and I suppose confidence to go and approach a publican and go, hey mate, look, give us a crack, Yeah. And I did, and I worked like 60, 70 hours a week, earning £5,
Right.
which is like 300 quid a week. My rent was like £120 a week.
Yeah, that's rough.
So and a pint was, £3, and like literally for the first 2 months, all I did was work. I just worked like 6-7 days a week because I couldn't really afford to do anything else. So I did that, and then I was like, well, shit, I can't. I've got to start to find these great bars. Like I knew about Lab, and I'd been to Lab, but those boys weren't hiring me. There's no way. That team was super tight back then. John Gakuru, who was a Sagachiba global ambassador, who now runs Sweet and Chili in the US and works for Sweet and Chili Australia. He was managing Lab at the time, and Gregor de Guthrie was still there, and Gregor is an industry icon. He's a young man that bartended in the UK and made a great name for himself. Came out to Australia and then passed away. It must have been 8 or 9 years ago now. It's a really sad tale, and if you talk to a lot of people that have been in the industry for a long time, they know of Gregor, and he's a lovely guy. But he was working the bar at Lab, so this was like, these guys were this was as good as it got. And I then went and got a job at a bar, which I thought was just a bar in Soho. It was like a new bar that was opening up, and the name should have gave it away, but it was called Too Much. It was a gay bar. And it was a gay bar, like a gay cabaret bar. Now, again, it hadn't opened, so I was a part of the opening team, and they brought me on to be like, they had a cocktail bar and they had the cabaret bar. So I was like, yep, we'll give this Australian guy the cocktail bar. The girls love it. He's straight, but that'll be great. And so I went and did that, and man, like, I was like, fuck it, it's a gay bar. I'm okay with that. Like, shit, I can do this. And it's in Soho, and they're talking celebrities are going to come through, and everyone's gay. I'm straight. I'm going to pick up birds. And so, I kind of came, I was like, this will be all right. This will be sweet. I'll be the only straight guy in the joint. My heart sank when I realised that, this was not just a gay bar. I mean, this was completely flamboyant and over the top. So the uniform that they gave us opening day was horrendous. Like red parachute pants with Swarovski Diamantes, like fucking on the ass, you know what I mean? Like unbelievable. And these super tight red shirts. And I was like, fuck, how am I going to get away with this? Anyway,
It was a gay bar,
Yeah. But it was cool though. It was my own little cocktail bar, and I got to run it. And look, celebrities did come through. Like I got to serve Marilyn Manson and Dita Von Teese. Yeah. I got to meet the bloody, what is it, the Queer Eye for the Straight Guy guys. Yeah. So all those lads, and that was just when they kind of hit it off. They would come in all the time actually, and they were really good blokes. So my mum loved them, so I made sure I got some photos with them and sent them back. Mum did get a little bit worried there, but there's no issue. But and then what was really cool though, and it was so important that I worked in this bar, and I think about it now, is that just around the corner from this bar was a bar called The Player. Now The Player was originally established by Dick Bradsell, and it became a part of the Match Group portfolio of bars, and it was the sister bar effectively of Milk and Honey. So Milk and Honey was this world-leading high-end private members bar. And then The Player also was a members bar, but it was it was not as stuffy. So the drinks were good. They could be a little bit more creative and a little bit more fun, not so speakeasy. And staff didn't have to be in suspenders and look like they were from the 1920s and 30s. You could just rock a tiki shirt if you wanted and a pair of shorts. And it was this cool space. But their team would come in to Too Much on a Saturday or a Sunday night when they finished work, because this place was still trading for another couple of hours, and they were like, look, it's a nice space, a nice bar. And Naomi, who was running the bar at the time, Nim, I just created this great affinity with her. And then when I found out, what the player was and what it was a part of, I was like, I really want to work for you guys. How do I get a job? And she, kind of put me in contact with a guy called Kevin Armstrong. And he was running this bar called Socio, and he was a 2IC for the Match Bar Group in terms of the drinks director. He became the drinks director. And he put me in contact with Kevin. I kind of went into this bar, Socio, which was 2001, 2002 Timeout Bar of the Year. Just this awesome space, 2 levels, like epic, with this full match bar, milk and honey drinks program, so freshly squeezed juices, classic prohibition style cocktails, all about premium spirits. The rail was like, I'd never seen a speed rail like it before. I mean, it must have been, nearly a metre long, double banked.
Yep.
And, like there was 5 different rums in it. There was, vodka and 2 different gins and, whiskeys and liqueurs and batch cocktails. We're talking like 2004.
Yeah.
It's like your zombie batch, your
Yeah.
Hong Kong Fooey Reloaded batch, your Long Island Iced Tea batch, and this place was a drinks making machine. Like,
awesome.
So he gave me a crack, and I just, I didn't look back. Like, Kevin gave me a crack, and he knew that I was passionate, and I told him, the reason why I've come to London is to learn from someone like you and work in a group like Match Group. I just want to absorb it all, tell me all of it. And mate, I was taking the tube, from Brixton to East London every day, back and forth. And I was reading cocktail books. I was reading, Class magazine. I was reading Flavour magazine. I was reading, the Source Guide by Difford. And I was just sucking up all this knowledge. And, the great thing about the Match Group as a business is that they really invested in education, but a very different approach to education. They taught their bartenders everything about spirits. So from production to taste profile to cocktails. So whereas other companies would focus on training around procedure or maybe customer experience and service, this was, you are an expert now on the category of tequila. So, there's 20 tequilas on your back bar, and you can talk about each and every one of them, where they come from, how they're aged. I mean, 15 years ago, right? Or 13 years ago, this is revolutionary. And it's this model for education that has effectively really kind of led, bar education and training, I think, throughout Australia.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely. The Bartender of the Year test that's taken, the written test and written exam, half the questions on that come from the original bartender test from the Match Bar Group. Yeah, so it was, so that's kind of how I found my way in that job. So it was a bit of, I wanted to do it. You just needed to find that avenue, and I suppose, I was lucky, even though I worked at that Too Much, but it gave me the introduction to Naomi, who was running the player, which had influence over the greater Match Group, and it got me in,
And it's a good story too.
Yeah.
To get you in there.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. That's so
all right.
far, Sean. So obviously we fast forward a little bit. I'm conscious of time for our
Sorry,
listeners as well.
I do talk a lot.
I'm loving all your stories.
Yeah,
Maybe we can do a second episode. But if we skip forward a little bit to where we are now, you've just moved company. What's happening there?
Yep. So I finished 10 years with Bacardi in April, and then I took on a role with Asahi Premium Beverages, and now I've actually finished that with Asahi and taken a role with Brown Forman. Mm-hmm. So, 10 years with Bacardi was amazing. What I did with that business was phenomenal, from a sales perspective to an advocacy perspective to a trade marketing perspective to experiential and events. Mm-hmm. Kind of did a lot through that business, and 10 years came up, which was good, and I decided it was time for a change and time to, just do something different. And maybe even, was I as passionate about the industry and bars and spirits 10 years in, and doing what I was doing as I had been maybe a couple of years ago? So these were all the kind of questions that were going around in my head. And then I looked at a business like Asahi. They'd exponentially grown in Australia since 2013 by purchasing brands like Mountain Goat, one of my favourite craft beer brands. Like, these guys, one of the original craft beers, 20 years on, they started with an amber ale, for Christ's sake. So they're out trying to push, an amber, like nutty kind of ale in a market in Victoria that's used to drinking Carlton Draft. They're so craft that they launched their pale ale like 12 months ago. You know what I mean? Like every other craft beer brand, they start with a pale ale. These guys make pale is like it's the arse end of it for them. And then, Asahi also purchased Peroni. So I look at that business and go, wow, they've got a global vision to be the world's biggest drink supplier. They're in these categories that I don't really know too much about. I wanted to learn about beer. I wanted to learn about non-alc and soft drink because, when you're dealing with customers from a venue perspective, spirits is amazing, right? And spirits are creative. Cocktails are creative. There's theatre behind it. But if you look at the revenue that's generated from those drinks, it's probably, depending on the style of venue, like if it's a high volume kind of hedonistic entertainment venue, spirits volume would be quite high, but primarily vodka, lime and soda. But most venues, the blend of drinks, tends to be quite heavily skewed towards beer, wine, soft drink, then spirits, realistically. And so when you're having a conversation with a customer, the outcome of that conversation based around non-alc and beer, if that's a negative conversation from your side and the customer side, that can actually have a real negative effect on their business. Like if you're a supplier and a customer's like, look, I need support, to grow to grow Thursday nights because they're killing me at the moment, can you jump on board and support us with kegs and this, that and the other? Well, if you say no to that as a beer partner, then they're kind of stitched up, because there's no other angles for them to kind of go down. It's a really important, part of the drinks business, beer and soft drink, and I just wanted to learn about it. So 7 months with Asahi in a sales role, which was great. And then Brown Forman, they approached me a couple of months back, or about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and Nick Morrison, who a lot of people in Brisbane will know, has moved down to Melbourne to do to take on the state there from a sales manager perspective. And they said, we'd love you to come and work with us. Would you think about coming back to spirits? And it really kind of created a bit of a conundrum for me because, I was really enjoying what I was doing with Asahi, and it was very different from my rock star lifestyle with Bacardi to being something that was very commercial, 101 basics, order taking, dealing with equipment issues, all that kind of basic stuff, which was good. It's good to do that. And but then I saw Brown Forman. I look at that company. It's one of the best companies in Australia. Globally, they just won an award for spirits industry most innovative. So they're the most innovative spirits company in the world, as awarded by peers. And you talk to anybody that works at Brown Forman, and they say it is the best company that you can work for. And I've known their business for a long time. I've worked alongside people like Grant Sharon and Mark Barnes and Paddy McEwen and all these people that are really entrenched in their business, and it just felt really right. And for me, the learning is American whiskey. I've done the Bourbon Trail, and I've been to the Brown Forman distilleries. Well, I've been to Woodford and Jack. Haven't been to Old Forester, but it's a category for me that I wouldn't say I'm an expert on. I could hand on heart say that I could wax lyrical about tequila, gin, vodka, rum, Scotch whiskey, but American whiskey, I don't feel like I've got that real, kind of knowledge, that real confidence to really talk that category and really kind of, build that category. So that's where the excitement for me comes from here. Plus it's a business that's really innovative in terms of how they're going to market. So the way they're set up from an on-premise perspective, they've got an on-premise focus and then a retail focus for sales. A lot of businesses are kind of blending those roles at the moment, and these guys are trying to do things differently. So it's more about what's the solution, where's the innovation, and for me that was really exciting. So that's why I took on a gig with Brown Forman, and I start with them next week.
Yeah, awesome. It kind of answers my next question, which is what are you learning about or exploring at the moment? I guess you want to learn more about American whiskey. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's more just how to evolve the way that a salesperson goes to market for a spirits company. When I was with Bacardi, one of the key things that Bacardi did in the last kind of 2 years was went through a huge restructure, cut its sales force in half, restructured management, leadership, everything. But what they focused on was, how do they go to market, and how do they, being a small player in spirits, how do they have an impact that is punching above their weight. Like, because Bacardi compared to Diageo, in Australia, it's like, Bacardi's number 10. I think Diageo's number 1, or maybe CCA's number 1 at the moment with Jim Beam. But, you're talking big fish, very little fish, where's the relevance in the conversation with the customer, all that kind of stuff. And so I look at Brown Forman, and they're very heavily invested in this strategic kind of thinking, which is, how are we going to market to bring our brands to life, engage and inspire the trade, and create long-term advocates for consumers. And because they're a family business and they're not beholden to shareholders outside of the Brown Forman family. Their vision and their kind of strategy is really, really long-term. So it's not just about quick-fire decisions. It's about going, okay, well, if I do this, what does that look like in 6 months, 12 months, 24, 48 months? And, with Bacardi, a lot of the stuff over the last couple of years was very, I'm going to do this and get this result really quickly. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how, it's almost like, it's like a stock market, essentially. You kind of, it's like a futures play, essentially, right? You're kind of putting an investment here around an area with this kind of vision for it to grow and grow and grow and kind of capture this market. That's what I'm gonna, I think, really enjoy learning about with Brown Forman as well.
I like that. Also like the analogy, the finance analogy. I think it's more like an option than a future.
As an option, yeah, beautiful.
Yeah,
sorry,
but
I was
that's
like,
all right.
is it a future or an option? I won't pretend to know anything about finance.
We've heard from a couple of brand ambassadors on the show. Jamie Fleming's been on. Den Woolley.
Yep.
And other amazing guests we've had on so far, and obviously yourself quite heavily in the brand ambassador sort of background. Yeah. Can you tell us about your experience? You've told us a little bit about your experience as a brand ambassador, but you said like a rock star lifestyle with Bacardi. Yeah. Is that similar to what the guys at Diageo do? Like in Jamie's episode, he told us a bit about what he does. Yeah. Is it? What do you actually do?
Yeah. So when I was with Bacardi, the brand ambassador role changed quite a lot for me over the decade that I was there. It's probably the reason why I stayed there for so long, because there was always so many different things going on, and I was able to have my fingers in multiple pies within the business, multiple business units. So that was always really exciting. So I think, the traditional sense of a brand ambassador today, you look at like a global ambassador, right? Who's actually, let's talk about like Nick Miles, right? For Sailor Jerry. I think he's the pinnacle of what a great brand ambassador is today. He lives and breathes the brand. All he focuses on is Sailor Jerry's and being a face for Sailor Jerry's and being a touch point for Sailor Jerry's and sharing everything that Sailor Jerry's is trying to share around music, around drinks, around sub or counterculture. With my role in Bacardi, though, it was so diverse, from like having an experiential focus to having like building brand plans based around education and sales objectives. Training and education and developing modules to, kind of support these sales and marketing initiatives. And then, also developing salespeople. So, educating, the sales reps on how to be more knowledgeable and how to talk about a brand and sell a brand through a drink occasion versus on price. One of the biggest things that a lot of sales guys will focus on directly as well, buy this case and I'll give you full discount and here's your support. Whereas that's great, case gets moved in, but it doesn't get pulled through. So, trying to change this idea of, it's just about selling a box to you're selling a brand, you're telling a story, and you're basically trying to create a reason for people to engage with that brand and then take it forward. So, if you look at the breakdown of what I've done, I've created, long-term partnership deals for, first pour accounts, which is primarily more of like a key account manager role or a sales role. I've developed, the advocacy plan for Bacardi, for the next 12 months. It was a 2-year plan that I developed before I left, which is all around, events and training and education and drink strategy and all this kind of stuff. to developing Project Botanicals, which is Bombay Sapphires. For me, it was such a groundbreaking experiential event that was unique to Australia only, and it was a cocktail and food degustation. And I think they just had the launch of the new Project Botanicals in Sydney this week. But for me, that was great. It was 13,000 covers over 12 nights, and 13,000 cocktails over 12 nights, and 6,000 covers and all this kind of stuff, and working with people like Gary Meehan, and coming up with a strategy to send food and cocktails out at the same time when you're doing 600 covers a night, setting a restaurant 3 times.
Yeah, sounds like a nightmare.
It's fucking fun though, man. Like, you talk about events, like, you've got to find a solution. Yep. When a brand's paid $500,000 and it's like, hey, on paper this works, like fucking communism does as well, right? When you look at it on paper. But you've then got to figure out how to actually do this, because some agency in Sydney's like, this is perfect, food's on trend, botanicals are food, why don't we do like a cocktail and food match? Yeah, sure. Like, how are we going to, what's the mechanisms that's going to go into doing that and achieving it, That stuff I love, that was a lot of fun. So, it's a role that can be anything and everything. So I think each company has different brand ambassadors for different reasons. A brand ambassador is essentially an asset to support marketing and sales objectives. Based around telling the story of the brand, engaging trade and consumer with the brand. Some brand ambassadors just focus on that one thing. Others spread across multiple brands and multiple areas within a business. And it can absolutely be anything. It could be making cocktails on a train with 5 bands, while you're doing the Bacardi Express. It could be sitting in an office, sending emails to customers, trying to work with them on doing a promotion around rum because it's International Rum Day. It's just such a broad gig.
Interesting that you say that, because sort of when you came into answering that question, you were talking about Nick Miles and how you said that could be potentially a better model for brand ambassadors, but then your experience has been more broad and you've also loved that experience too. So interesting as well. If there are any, obviously, distributors listening, you have a question there?
No.
Oh, any distributors listening who are thinking about this sort of model, about what might work for their businesses as well, so and the teams that they run. So that's really cool. Thank you for your insights there.
Yeah.
I want to ask as well, when you enter a sales role, so as a rep or a brand ambassador, obviously brand ambassadors don't explicitly sell, but as a rep, what sort of training systems do distributors have to prepare you for those sorts of activities?
So when I first started in sales with Bacardi, it was literally, here's the keys to the car, here's your journey plan, go nuts. The world's changed quite a lot, and having sales processes and steps to process, like the structured calls and all this kind of stuff. This is a really important part in the sales industry, and each company has their own different approach, but I think there's kind of like a standard model that everybody would kind of agree to, which is, you need to plan, you need to use data, so you need to know who your customers are, what they're selling, what's relevant to their business. You need to have this information at hand, and you need to have a plan when you're going in and taking somebody's time. You need to be aware of their venue, so you need to go and see the venue, whether it's, like you've got a meeting at 11 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Turn up at 3:30 if you haven't been there the day before or the night before or the week before. Have a look around. You got to go and see what's going on. Like, do they have menus? Do they promote drinks on boards? Do they use screens? Are their staff passionate? Like, when the staff chat to you, are they like, man, I love this industry. I love this beer or this spirit or this wine, or it's about kind of building all this knowledge and awareness about this business, so that when you actually have time with the customer and decision maker, you're not wasting their time, because everyone's time poor, and there's so many different companies out there today. There's so many different sales reps there. Like, you're literally fighting your way through. And like, you think Brisbane's bad? Wait until you go to Melbourne or Sydney, which has even more competition down there in terms of distributors and wholesalers for much more niche brands. So it's a you've got to be structured, and each company has it, but it kind of goes around planning, understanding, uncover the opportunity, meet with the customer, ask them questions, find out what's important to them, what they're working on. Do any of the things that you kind of were thinking this could work well fit in with their needs? If so, bang, look to make that next step to execute it. Or can we get this working for you? Can we get this product in? Do we need to do a tasting when you start? What is it that's going to make this work for you? And then it's, close out by following up, and then, making sure that you stay on top of it. So if you have a meeting with someone and it's like, yep, cool, it's all done, product's in, cocktail list is done, you want to be back in there the following week, or at least the following fortnight, just to, make sure it's all working. Have a chat with people. Is that working for you? Was this the right solution to your need as a customer? Like you wanted to uplift your vodka sales, so we've done a espresso martini or whatever. Did this work for you? Is this working? Do we need to change course? Is it a Moscow Mule? Does nobody drink espresso martinis anymore? So yeah, I think that's kind of it broken down, and each company has a different approach. So Lion use the 8 steps of the structured call. I think Bacardi now use in-call impact. I'm not too sure what Brown Forman's is. Asahi have a very similar model as well. The process of the structured call. And it's, these are the things that are available. And then as you kind of move up and stay longer with a company, you'll get given opportunities depending on their scale and their size and their, people development policies. But you'll get access to things like, negotiating skills, where it's a 3-day course, you're in Sydney or Melbourne, and you're spending 3 days learning about, hardcore negotiations. When you're dealing with big customers where, if you make a mistake, that could have a real long-term negative effect on your business. And how to get the most out of people, read body language, all that kind of stuff.
There are a lot of, obviously there are a lot of people doing sales training, but are those trainings run in-house, or are they externally hired people to run the training programs? Yeah,
it's different for each company. It really depends on what the MD, I suppose, sees as, or the CEO sees as being relevant. I think Diageo probably has a lot of access to a lot of external consultants. But again, I might be talking out of school there. But from conversations I've had with Diageo and people from Diageo, that they've got a lot of access to these types of external sales methods and training and consultants to come in based around multiple areas, whether it's being a drinks expert, being a great salesman, whatever. They definitely do. It really just depends on where it fits within the vision of the business, and the budgets of the business and everything else. And I suppose the capability of the team in that business, do they need to go and invest money into, having these external consultants, or is the current, other sales managers and direct leaders doing a great job to train and educate and build confidence in their team to deliver the result?
Yeah, okay, cool. That's very interesting, because I'm looking at sales systems even, and how they're used within the industry as well. I sort of want to uncover a lot more about that. So maybe we can delve further into that another time.
Yeah, sure.
The next question I have for you is, what innovations or innovative techniques have you seen in the industry over your time? Obviously, you've seen a lot of crazy different things, and maybe I need to be a bit more specific with that question.
Well, mate, like if you want to start, when I started in the industry bartending, Facebook didn't exist. Social media didn't exist. I got onto Facebook at the 2007 42 Below Cocktail World Cup as a 42 Below ambassador, and met some friends and people said, "You on Facebook?" And I don't even think Facebook had 1 million users by then either. So social media massively, has had a huge impact. And everything from, there's always innovation, there's always changes. I think the ones that I'm really enjoying at the moment is sustainability as an innovation. So more of like an ethos versus like a technique per se, because what sustainability is we've got to remove this hat of sustainability is, hippies smoking weed, going, man, don't hurt the trees, dude. Like, sustainability is profitable businesses that have zero waste and that have long-term vision around growth and are going to be there for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's what I find really quite interesting at the moment. So, and I think it's one that is going to be a hot button for a long time to come. Like Glenn, I think you had on recently as well. He's gone down the line with his barware, and one of his top selling products, I think, is is definitely those biodegradable straws. So that's a great step in the right direction. But it's, it's other areas like, how are people approaching cocktail menus and ingredients? Are you juicing your lemons before you're peeling them, or peeling them before you juice them? Are you, are you getting as much out of an ingredient as possible, to make the business more profitable? Because, people aren't going out as much as they used to. They're certainly not spending as much as they used to.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
You're in flow
No,
where are people going?
The same people are here, and the market value is exactly the same in Brisbane.
Yeah.
But there's just so many offerings on. It's just so much going on, and every weekend there's a festival or an event. Like the Espresso Martini Festival, the Balimba Festival, the Nunda Festival, the Italian Festival, the Norwegian Festival. Do you know that there's a Scandinavian Festival? I never knew. These festivals draw 15,000, 20,000 people every time they're on. Tenerife Festival. These festivals take people, out of venues. People are also more health conscious now as well. Like people don't drink as much anymore. That's a fact. People are more educated now than ever before, and so they're making more educated choices, certainly in regards to drinks. So people are, moving away from drinks that are, sugary, sweet, perceived to be, bad for you, and moving to things that are, perceived to be a lot more healthier, or let's say a better option. Vodka, lime, and soda. If you told Schweppes 10 years ago or 15 years ago that vodka, lime, and soda would be the biggest selling drink, they would laugh you out of the office. Don't be silly. Vodka, lime, and soda, that's ridiculous. That'll never go anywhere. Because as a post-mix business, soda water's free. So most of these post-mix, most of these businesses using post-mix at the moment, their biggest selling line is soda. It's something else. And they're not paying for that, right?
Yeah.
So, this is what's going on within the marketplace at the moment. There is a change, and the consumer model is changing, and the money is just being spread thinner and thinner and thinner. Now, the venues that are doing well and are making money, those guys are doing a great job. And you talk to a lot of these operators, and then you talk to other people that bars or restaurants aren't doing as well. Their offering is just as good. They've got operators that are fantastic, know what they're doing. They've got a great database. Their location's great, but people just aren't going there. Because the market's only so big. I don't see any one area killing it. I just see that the market is spread quite thin, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to get that dollar out of that customer.
You said there that it's the Brisbane market, but what about more broadly in Australia or other cities or even internationally?
Well, Melbourne, so, Perth is under the pump at the moment, as a Western Australia as an economy in general, I'm sure you're aware, is pretty foobarred. My brother and sister live over there, and housing prices, it's a bloodbath, right? So, mining's dried up, all these kind of things. So, that economy and those bars were driven off people earning six figures quite easily and having plenty of splash clout. So, those people aren't around anymore. So these bars, they're not as profitable, or, maybe they're not even making any, they're in massive decline, and, they're going backwards. So I know, Perth is under the pump a bit. Not all of them, but, hospitality in general over there is under the pump in a big way. I think Adelaide's doing quite well because it's quite small, and the bars and the restaurants that are there that are premium and that are good, it's not a saturation. I don't think they've hit a saturation point just yet. But again, Adelaide's a weird town because people only go out for I think it's April. I think is it March? April?
Yeah.
It's like Adelaide Fringe.
Fringe Festival.
And it kills it. It's amazing. And then, you talk to operators down there and it's and then it's dead for 11 months or whatever until December. But, Sydney and Melbourne, Sydney's obviously been affected by the lockout laws and, but if you go to Newtown, it's booming, if you go to Bondi, it's killing it. But, the CBD is under the pump, and King's Cross, man, it's a ghost town. I mean, there's no venues there anymore, But the venues that are doing well are killing it. They're doing a great job, and, they're world leading. And then you look at Melbourne, and, Melbourne, venues in Melbourne, I think, again, there's probably a bit of oversaturation in the marketplace in Melbourne, but there's still a lot of growth there. Property prices are rising. A lot of people are moving to Victoria. They've, it's been quoted that, Melbourne will take over Sydney in the next 5 years for population, or 10 years for population. So it will be, the place to be. And in terms of the offering down there, I mean, if you can't find a place to have a drink and something to eat in Melbourne that you like, you're fucked. Because Melbourne's got everything, and it's well priced. it's accessible,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, people in Melbourne are cool, you know, like
Yeah.
you can always go down there and have a good time. And, you know, and with Brisbane, I think we've got amazing restaurants and bars. And, I'll say it, I think Brisbane's got the best bars in Australia, and I've always said this from the start. I thought the Bowery was revolutionary when it launched. You know, it created craft cocktail culture in Australia way before anybody else, you know what I mean? Like, and they were doing milk and honey style drinks in 2002, 2003, which was insane, you know, to a market of Brisbane, which was drinking Bundy rum and Midori, and they were, you know, selling great classic cocktails. It was unbelievable. And then, you know, places like our live music, right? Like, I've been saying this for a long time, but I think live music in Brisbane, or live music venues in Brisbane, kill live music venues in Sydney and Melbourne. You look at something like Lefty's Old Time Music Hall. What an epic venue, right? Like, you walk in there, it is amazing, but the music offering is so weird and unique and country. But if you go into that venue, have a drink, and don't have a good time, there's something wrong with you. You're not going to have a good time anywhere. Like, you're a boring person and all your stories suck. You know what I mean? Like, that venue's great. Brooklyn Standard, you know, it's another one. Like, what a venue. Great cocktails, awesome stuff, awesome vibe, amazing music offering throughout the course of the week. 11 rooftop, you know, that view, I reckon that's the best rooftop bar in Australia, hands down.
Yeah.
And I've been to most of them. You know, you've got places like Blue Horizon at the Shangri-La in Sydney, but it's not open, it's closed. I think there's probably a couple more in Sydney that you know, might have a better view, but I just think 11 for me, really, it's just a beautiful space, and you can get a great drink there. You can, you know, that cityscape view is gorgeous, and I really, for me, it's the best in Australia.
Oh, 100%. I love all those bars that you just mentioned there. The next question I have for you, Sean, is what's your number one industry resource?
Look, for me, I actually use social media. So I've got a large network on Facebook of people that are involved in our industry in multiple different roles and levels all over the world. So I kind of use that, and I see something on my Facebook of, you know, someone like Jacob Briers, you know, posting about being somewhere, talking to a group of people, and then I'll, you know, from that I'll do some research, and that is kind of, for me, the key kind of driver, because that's a true trend that's happening now that you can kind of really look at. Whereas if you say read an online article, you know, it could be 2-3 months away, you know, that activity actually took place. So you can kind of be ahead of the curve that way. But, you know, things like 4 Bars, so the bartender resource is really, really good. Sam Bygrave, who's the editor, I really like what he's done with that magazine over the years, and his writing style is really good, and the content's always really good and really relevant. You know, there's liquor.com as well, which is a great resource. It's an American-based online magazine, so very American-focused. But, you know, like, man, that's a big market over there for spirits and cocktails. And, you know, even though I still think the UK is where all the innovation happens, you know, the US is still a big beast. And I think, you know, the US market and the Australian market in terms of drink styles are quite similar, you know. Classic, simple, little twist of ingredient. Whereas in the UK, you know, you can really just throw, you know, imagination at the wall and see what sticks, kind of thing, and it tends to work over there. Yeah, so I think those 2 online resources are really good. And then, you know, look, I've collected, I don't know, probably 100 books over the years, and you just always keep collecting, just things that really, you know, kind of stand out to you. The two authors that I really like, Dave Arnold and Jeffrey Morgan Tyler. Like, so. From a tools and techniques perspective, Jeffrey Morgan Tyler. From a, you know, innovation and like flavour kind of process, Dave Arnold. You get both of their books, and, you know, like, there's not much that you can't kind of conquer, I think, now as a modern day bartender.
Awesome. I'll post links up to some of their resources as well. What advice do you have for someone who wants to be successful in hospitality?
I reckon if you want to be successful, just be truthful to yourself. So if you want to be successful, you need to be passionate, because it's not you don't get paid the best, you know. Like, if you'd be working 80, 90 hours a week, and you're not earning that much money, you know, you're doing a hard grafting job, you're away from your family and friends a lot of the time. So, you know, you've got to be passionate about it in a big way. So that's got to be, I think, the first thing, that you've got to really know that this is what you want to be doing. And if that's the case and you know it, then I think it's about this value of always trying to be helpful and be resourceful. So, helpful in the understanding of if you're working with somebody that you're working alongside them, you're not working against them. Helpful from dealing with customer and customer interaction. And then I think resourceful is really important too, because we've all experienced it. Like, shit goes wrong all the time. Bar gets jammed, or customers have issues or complaints. Your ability to be resourceful and find a solution, can have either a positive or negative effect on that experience or how that venue operates. So I think if you've got those kind of two values and philosophies, you can't really go wrong. And if you want to, I think this key one as well from Alex Cretania, who was the man behind the Artesian in London for the Langham Hotel for 5 years when it was the world's best bar. One of his kind of philosophies that he shares with all his team is don't be a dick. And I think that makes so much sense. I don't even think that's just hospitality in Australia. I think that's something that we should teach school kids.
Definitely.
Just people in general, don't be a dick, because even in terms of like your interaction with the customer, we all know those customers that it's like, can I speak to the manager, please? You didn't put lime in my vodka lime and soda. It's like, oh no, it's just there on the top. No, you didn't do that. It's not the right. You're just like, fuck, calm down. Like we've all had those, and you've just got to be like, yep, no worries, let me fix that for you. So don't be a dick. That's probably the best philosophy you're gonna have.
I like that one. Ultimately, where do you want to be? What is it that you want to be doing, Sean?
Well, I tried opening my own bar, and that didn't go down too well. It was a good experiment. I often laugh with my wife and say it was, we've got the most expensive rum collection in Brisbane because it cost us 150 grand.
Nice.
But yeah, I think, look, for me, it's my plan within this industry is to, I'm really passionate about people and leadership and coaching. I really love it. I love taking people and helping them, kind of on their journey and on their path, and helping them, go to bigger and better things. So for me, it's around that coaching and development. I think, I've done that from an ambassador perspective. I think I'd like to do that now from a sales perspective and really kind of hone in onto that. And then, I've always liked this idea of travel retail, which is a part of the spirits business, or just general alcohol business. It's a big market, it's international travel, it's all around kind of three things that I really love. It's around creating unique and innovative kind of brand concepts or brand engagement concepts, dealing with key customers, that are very important and profitable for the business that you work for from a spirit side of things, but also in terms of, these guys are like world-leading businesses as well, which open doors everywhere around the world. And then, it's that kind of education piece as well. So it's those kind of three areas that I really enjoy doing. So I'd probably like to go down that pathway in the next 5 years or so. But we'll just see. We'll just see what happens. You can never. If you do put all your thought into it, you can definitely push yourself down that track.
Definitely.
But there's always things that can pop up or happen, or who knows, mate. Like I'm like another opportunity where it's like, you know what? Actually, I want to open a bar again, and let's go and do it.
That's right. Well, thank you for sharing your insights today, Sean.
No
It's been amazing having you on the show today.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Stay in touch with the show after hours at Hospopreneurs on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Do you know a hospopreneur? Shoot us an email, hospopreneurs@gmail.com. Creativity and innovation in hospitality. The Hospopreneurs Podcast with James Henderson.